The European Central Bank, aka the ECB, just announced something absolutely crazy. And if you hold XRP, or even if you're following Ripple, this is something that you need to be paying attention to right now. And I'm going to be addressing in this video everything happening around Europe for Ripple and XRP, on why exactly this announcement from the ECB is so important for both Ripple and XRP. So let's first start off with going back to December, because, the European Central Bank has been really talking about doing certain things with either digital assets, CBDCs, things like that for quite some time. Now, back in December, specifically December 19th, we did get a big update regarding the digital euro set for the second half of this year for a launch. The ECB has completed preparations and is awaiting political approval. The digital euro is targeted to roll out in the second half of 2026. Now, this is one of many announcements coming from the ECB, especially going all the way back to 2025, because again, 2025 was pretty much a big year for most nations to really push forward on either digital currencies, stablecoin initiatives, or just overall crypto adoption. But the ECB has been very vocal that they want a digital euro for years now. I do think one of the first major announcements from Europe was back in 2020 into 2021. And then also you got to think about all of the connections back to some of the other big players in the space like Quant, because also we go back to the Digital Euro Association, which both Ripple and Quant are on. That's definitely a big one. Now, if we go over here, we also have Justin, the EU Council has approved the proposal for a digital euro, allowing the ECB to move forward with a government-backed digital currency for everyday payments. Now, a lot of people are very terrified of, the ECB or any government launching a government-backed digital currency. And listen, I don't blame them. I do think that this does come with concerns. I've always said, CBDCs are not actual digital currencies. They're essentially digital prisons because they want to put controls on the currencies. They want to put limitations on the currencies. I don't like that. Obviously, with stablecoins, you kind of get the same, sort of deal. It's just a little bit different because you have a private company launching them, or even public companies issuing them, like Circle. But we do know ROUSD from Ripple is a stablecoin that they are in control of, but it is programmable. And you can control, a stablecoin. You can make limitations on the stablecoin as well. But it's much harder when it's out of the government's reach, because again, when the government launches it or a central bank launches it, it's a little bit more of a different story. But over here, we also have from January 26th, update as Europe enforces MiCA and the US delays crypto rules, firms face regulatory gaps and shifting capital flows. We do know that regulations are really at the top priority list, if you will, and the US has been falling drastically behind on this game. Europe was one of the first major players to launch a full-on regulatory framework, which was MiCA. Now, since then, there has been a lot of growth within the Europe region, but I do want to, just kind of go off of the idea that MiCA was also very restrictive on a few things. I don't really like the, full bill, if you will, around MiCA or the breakdown of it. I've gone over it in the past as well. It's definitely harmful for a lot of stablecoins. However, most stablecoins like ROUSD are still operating in Europe because, again, they're fully transparent and they, are fully compliant as well. But Europe did beat the US to a full-on regulatory framework, and now they're starting to move forward on digital currencies in a big way. Now, since MiCA, back in December, we did get an update regarding the market cap of euro-based stablecoins. They more than doubled in the last 12 months after June 2024, when the EU's MiCA stablecoin regulations came into force, according to a report from payments processor DECTA. Now, today, we know that the euro stablecoins are definitely growing fast. And that's because, again, we're starting to see a lot more digital currency adoption within Europe because of MiCA. Now, there hasn't really been major institutional players jumping on board just yet in Europe, but I do believe that that will change. I still think that a lot of this is, kind of waiting on the US to get everything in place as well. I know that it's crazy to think it's all about the US, but a lot of nations will follow through once the US does their thing as well. But on top of that, We go back over here to one of the most recent announcements from Ripple, which is back in December, right? It was December 12th. They announced their partnership with Amina Bank, the first bank in Europe to adopt their licensed payment solution, Ripple Payments. In doing so, Amina Bank is bringing seamless, friction-free cross-border payments to its crypto-native clients, helping them scale without hitting the old banking friction wall. Now, this was one of the few institutional players moving forward on adopting a crypto strategy or tapping into a crypto-based platform like Ripple Payments. And like I said, they're still kind of slow a bit, but we already see where a lot of the attention is, which is on Ripple. Now, Ripple also just got their EU license to offer payments within the EU region. We've secured our preliminary electronic money institution license approval from Luxembourg's Commission de Surveillance du Secteur Financier, which, by the way, we'll talk about this here in a moment. We'll come back to this. But this is definitely a big one. And like I said, I've been talking about some of these moves that Ripple has been making. The key thing that we're looking at here is that the EU has been a leader, right? They even say that down here, that with the EU taking the lead in building a regulatory framework for digital assets, we are helping institutions transition from pilots to commercial scale. And we are bridging the gap between legacy finance and the digital future to unlock trillions in dormant capital. And yeah, the EU is definitely a big, important area for Ripple. One that Ripple has also made their name known in for quite some time. Now, I'm bringing up all of this because of this announcement right here. Big shout out to Ryan Solomon on X, IOV_owl. Document found. This is from January 27th. The ECB just approved DLT issued securities as eligible collateral. Starting March 30th of this year, banks can use DLT issued assets to unlock central bank liquidity, exploring ways to expand eligibility to assets issued and settled entirely on DLT networks. I said that this is huge news coming from the ECB because effective on March 30th, banking institutional players will be permitted to utilize DLT issued assets as eligible collateral to access central bank liquidity facilities. Regulators are actively advancing frameworks to extend eligibility to assets natively issued, settled, and finalized entirely on distributed ledger networks. And the best part about this document is that it's right in line with what Ripple has been doing. The ECB paves way for acceptance of DLT-based assets as eligible Eurosystem collateral. Eurosystem to accept marketable assets issued in Central Securities Depositories, CSDs, using DLT as eligible collateral for Eurosystem credit operations as of March 30th of this year. Further work is exploring ways to expand eligibility to assets issued and settled entirely on DLT networks. Decision reflects Eurosystem's commitment to innovation and fosters technological progress in the European financial markets. This is insane. The main reason why this is so crazy is because this is coming from a central bank, specifically the European Central Bank. When a movement like this is, happening, it affects every other nation. Every nation is now looking at this and saying, we need to get in line with this. We need to start doing something with, DLT, with blockchain, with crypto, whatever the case may be. And what's crazy about all of this is the timing. You seriously can't make this up. Ripple literally just got their EU license on January 14th. On December 12th, they announced Amina Bank as their first European bank client. We go back to May of last year where Schumann Financial's EuroP became the first MiCA compliant to Euro stablecoin integrated on the XRP ledger. We also go back to August 5th of last year. Big shout out to Smoke Dog for this. Official 2025 European Banking Authority logs reveal 2 private meetings with Ripple on ROUSD issuance in the EU and MiCA regulation. Ripple is the only crypto company listed in these meeting logs, by the way. And yes, this is from June 27th of last year, meetings of EBA staff members, the European Banking Authority staff members with stakeholders Q1 of 2025. Now, we do have all of the names here, exactly what the development or the department and the unit is, the meeting on, the organizer and name of the event, all of that. If we go over here, we have Ripple, meeting with Ripple. This was on March 24th. This was update on progress of ROUSD issuance in the EU. And we have Digital Finance Unit, Innovation, Conduct, and Consumers Department. Now, again, not too crazy, just the, stablecoin being in question. But then also over here, we have Digital Finance Unit, Innovation, Conduct, and Consumers Department. This was from January 28th, meeting with Ripple. And this is with MiCAR, aka MiCA, regulations. This is very interesting because, again, there's not too many big names on here outside of, crypto. Like when we think about the names here, we have the ISDA, which is a major derivatives player, Deutsche Bank. We also have Microsoft on here, Red Hat. Over here we have Bragg. I mean, these are it's crazy. But like a lot of these players are not crypto players. The only other one really here is blockchain for Europe. That's about it. There's really no other major crypto players. It goes to show you the weight behind Ripple's name. And then we also go back to October 10th from Casey Craddock, who is the managing director of UK and Europe. She was there for a roundtable in the EU. MiCA gave European banks and financial institutions the confidence to lean into the industry. As a result, we now see lots of banks and financial institutions such as Societe Generale, which by the way is launching EURV on the XRP ledger as well, which is another Euro stablecoin, and BBVA building out digital asset custody and tokenization capabilities working with crypto natives like Ripple. Now, if we are looking at this, look at the names included in this roundtable. We obviously do have the European Commission here, the ESMA, the CNMV, the UK FCA, BaFin, Axiology, and then Ripple. But Ripple was like the moderator of this, which means Ripple was literally hosting this with the European FinTech Association. Now, I'm more so focused on Axiology here because Axiology, a lot of people actually don't even know about this project, but this is a key project within the XRP Ledger ecosystem dating all the way back to I want to say 2023, might be 2022. I know that it was posted from a Ripple employee. We looked into Axiology. This is definitely a big project. So here is the experiment with Axiology: primary issuance of bonds by financial institutions, corporates, and sovereigns in delivery versus payment settlement. In some instances, also including lifecycle management of securities, coupon payment and redemption, and secondary trading. We have the Euro system interoperability solution, which is Trigger Solution. By the way, this is all based around that Euro system, deployment. We go back to this image, right? This is all based around the Euro system. This is everything, regarding the Euro system's commitment to innovation and fostering technological progress. Well, guess what? There's already a project on the XRP Ledger that's solving huge use cases within the Euro system. The participants, issuer Axiology as mock-up Ministry of Finance. We also have investor mock-up participants of the Axiology DLT TSS platform. DLT market operator, UAB Axiology DLT. The use case covered the following scenarios: debt securities auction, primary issuance and settlement, coupon payments, maturity redemption of debt securities. Again, let's go back to this, operation, right? The main thing that we're looking at here is the Euro system to accept marketable assets issued in central securities depositories using DLT as eligible collateral for Euro system credit operations. This will all be sort of, it's all in line with essentially what Axiology is solving. If we come down here, DLT technology used on market side as reported by market stakeholders, the Axiology DLT trading and settlement system is a private permissioned infrastructure built using the open source code of the XRP Ledger. While Axiology benefits from the XRP technology, it operates as an independent system designed to streamline trading, settlement, and custody of tokenized assets such as financial securities and enhance security and also efficiency. Now you might say, all right, well, this doesn't really require the public XRP Ledger at all. It's just using the open source code of the XRP Ledger. You could argue that, sure. However, considering the fact that Axiology is creating a private permissioned infrastructure, it needs to, at one point in time, and I would argue that it's going to happen pretty quick because a lot of these private players are starting to shift to the public, chain side. This still needs to be bridged. We still need to have a public platform tied to this. which guess what? If they're using the private, side of the XRP ledger, aka the open source code of the XRP ledger, I would argue that they're most likely going to tap into the XRP ledger itself in terms of a public chain. But these are all of the connections back to Europe. I mean, Ripple has some significant names tied to it. They have so many big moves happening around the Europe region. I would argue now with the ECB launching this, this is a huge game changer. March 30th, 2026, banks can officially use DLT issued assets to unlock central bank liquidity. This is something that we have talked about for years happening, and it's actually happening now. This is crazy. Big shout out to IOV_owl for this. And with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video.